judgment, are voter ID laws racist? Professor Tolson.
Thank you for that question. So it depends. One thing we have to stop doing is treating all voter ID laws as the same.
Okay, so your answer, I want to move quickly, so it depends is your answer?
Yes, that's my answer.
Okay, so what voter ID laws are racist?
Apologies, Mr. Cruz, your state of Texas, perhaps?
Okay, so you think the entire state of Texas is racist. What about requiring an ID to vote is racist?
So I think, sir, that's pretty reductive. I'm not saying the entire state of Texas is racist.
You just said my state of Texas, so you tell me what about the Texas voter ID laws is racist?
So the fact that the voter ID law was put into place to diminish the political power of Latinos with racist intent and had been found to have
You're
racist
asserting
intent.
that. What's your evidence for that?
The federal district court that first resolved the constitutionality of Texas's voter ID law.
Okay, so your view is voter ID laws are racist. How about you, Mr. Yang?
I agree with Professor Tolson. Voter ID laws can be racist.
Okay, that's two. Mr. Science?
There are some voter ID laws that are racially discriminatory in intent.
And that is 3. I think you are outnumbered, Mr. Cruz. So obviously Ted Cruz doesn't just like to be ratioed online. That is in person at the Senate Judiciary Committee on restoring the Voting Rights Act, combating discriminatory abuses. You guys obviously remember that the Supreme Court did gut the Voting Rights Act, which was sort of the last barrier to a lot of states being able to pass all the voter ID laws like Ted Cruz's state of Texas is doing currently. The first person to speak there was Franita Tolson, whose name I just love because it's Franita, which is like just a better, fun take on my name, Francesca. Anyway, love you, Franita. That's Professor Franita Tolson. And then you heard John C. Yang, who's the president of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and Thomas Sayans, the president of Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. They are all testifying about new voter ID laws and other voter suppression laws, let's just be honest, and had immediate things to say. And there's Ted Cruz trying to make it like, you're saying my state is racist? No. Hey, pay attention. We're in a discussion about voter ID laws. The voter ID laws are racist. What are you saying? And so that was Professor Tolson immediately retorting. I just want to reference, if you think she just made anything that she set up, she did not. She's talking about the fact that there was already precedent by a US district court. Let's just go to this graphic. In 2017, Judge Nelva Gonzalez Ramos of the US District Court for the Southern District of Texas ruled that the Texas voter ID law, which requires voters to present a driver's license or other identification to cast a ballot, violated the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So that's already stood. That was already decided. And she's bringing the evidence clearly the senator hasn't heard about. Caroline, what were your reactions to this?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out just Cruz's attempt to like frame the professor in what I assume is, he knew she was gonna bring the facts. And I think he tried to like trip her up by getting whatever soundbite or whatever of her saying Texas is racist when she said Texas is, meaning the voter laws, the voter ID laws are racist. Yeah, this is, I'm really happy this conversation is happening even so, when we don't have a federal election coming up soon, because now is the time that these concerns need to be addressed. And I think instances like this that go viral, where you just have a table of very calm but passionate experts, like really kind of dumbing themselves down to try to explain to right-wing politicians why voter ID laws are very disenfranchising. Because now is the time we need to deal with this. And I think videos like that, and in the previous elections where, how they show like the lines getting into voting centers and voting booths and stuff, and how that narrative is changing, that like that is not a good thing. You should be able to walk in and cast a vote and not have to take hours, even 30 minutes out of your day to vote. And I think it's really great that in these off years, we are having these conversations. We're sort of chipping away at this, that this idea of elections and election rules being sort of only talked about right leading up to the election. So I'm very happy to see it.
Yeah, I mean, and this is just it's a hearing, it's fact finding, but because it has, the word discrimination, which is very funny because you saw the three of them. I mean, Cruz is like, is it racist? Which of course, right? The R word for Republicans is like, they think it's their N word, but it's not, but they see it as that. And like, they're all saying, yeah, it's racist. Yeah, it's racist. And then the third guy's like, it is discriminatory. It is racially biased. How can I say this in a way that doesn't hurt your white little feelings? And your performative feelings, because yeah, exactly. Cruz really wanted this to be like his moment, but no, it was Franita's moment, and we all know that. Of course, this is happening in his state. I mean, this is happening while simultaneously in his state, Governor Greg Abbott, who is honestly a Marvel villain at this point, signed Senate Bill 1 after the Republican-led legislature approved it during the second special session that the second-term GOP governor had called this year. Democrats had previously blocked versions of the measure by fleeing the state for weeks, preventing the House from having the quorum necessary to do business. The new law makes it harder to obtain mail-in ballots, prohibits drop boxes to turn in those ballots, limits early voting time, and eliminates drive-through voting. There is also an interview that I believe John did with the author of that article, Ellie Mistal. So definitely check that out on the Damage Report. All about the voting rights in Texas, and yes, and how whenever you limit the time people can vote, whether it's time of day, whether it's mail-in ballots, whether it's drop boxes, those inevitably, all those rules inevitably fall on the backs of Black and brown people, of immigrants, right? Of working people, of people who, English as a second language, all of the folks who already have barriers to being able to take time off to go vote, right? And the fact that we don't have voting in this country as a national holiday, I mean, how? How can we honestly go around and say we're the shining city on the hill, that we're the best democracy in the world? Anyone who tells you that should be just laughed in the face of. Honestly, it is, and from the left and right, the so-called left and right, people echo this all the time. Well, then why isn't voting a national holiday? Riddle me that. That's it. And yeah, so that's obviously something that I'm glad we're talking about. But of course, we've got the For the People Act. We've got this, sweeping, expansive federal act that needs to be passed by Democrats, right? Can we pass that through budget reconciliation? Like will Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema get on board with that if they won't get on board with, the current budget as it stands? I mean, all of this is like, we're just putting out these fires nationwide because we don't have broad federal action to protect voting rights, and the Supreme Court is not helping. Caroline, yeah, thoughts on all this, or are we? Yeah.
No, yeah, I think you're spot on. It's God, I mean, sorry, I just heard Manchin and Sinema and my brain just kind of like stopped. Yeah, I think they have that effect on people of not being able to get anything else done. Yeah, it really is just a tragedy. It's crazy talking to people in certain other countries, like their voting processes of they're just like, oh yeah, you're like just sent a ballot and then you vote and whatever. It's like, it's mind blowing.
Yeah, or you can't sell alcohol the day before the election.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah. I lived for a time in Argentina, which I talk about a lot. But yeah, you're not allowed to sell alcohol. Like alcohol sales stop. I believe that maybe in some states in the United States also that is the case, but you can't make an inebriated decision.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. But yes, you're right. Even in states like, the longest I've ever waited in a line was like, if there's not Taylor Swift tickets or like brunch at the end of your line, like why? This is not worth it.
No.
But imagine waiting that long for voting. Not good.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.